Welcome to the Small Town Pastor Podcast. This podcast is a ministry of Small Town Network. We exist to make disciples, train pastors, and plant churches in smaller communities. My name is Eric Nielsen. I'm joined today by my co-host, Tony. How's it going, Tony?
Great.
Good to see you again. I feel like I just saw you like a minute ago.
Maybe
Uh,
something like that.
and today we are joined by another brother named Tony who spells it, this is controversial, spells it correctly or incorrectly.
It is certainly incorrectly.
Oh,
Hey, at least he'll admit it.
Tony
I'm a
Salva.
weirdo.
Yeah. I met Tony. Tony's the director of the Evergreen Network. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And before it was the Evergreen Network, it was the Christian Evangelistic Association. I think I like Evergreen Network better.
It's a little
It's
easy. It rolls
catchier
off the tongue a little
and it's got a
easier.
nice logo. Um,
Yeah.
And I've planted twice with two different organizations, and both times I planted within a year of me signing on, the director quit. So I don't
No
know if it's
comment.
me. And then I inherited new directors, and so I was already underway when Tony took the helm from a very good friend and faithful man named George Johnson, who was the director of the CEA for how many years was he? Was it like it was 20 plus, right?
20, yeah, 21, I think.
Yeah,
Somewhere there,
Wow.
maybe
20 years.
22. Yeah.
Wow.
Planted a lot of churches. George
Mhm.
pioneered a lot, and Tony
Yeah.
was George's hand-selected successor. Um, and it's been going really well. I mean, I'm not here to gush on you, but I am amazed at how many thoughtful changes you've made in a timely manner. You didn't rush in and blow up the organization. You've taken time, you've made some strategic changes, and it seems like things are going very well for the Evergreen Network. And my network really is
Yeah.
not be possible without the support of Tony and Evergreen. They've not only encouraged me to do it, helped us financially. I call Tony and ask him for advice, both about my church and about our network. And so it's
It's
just a
mutual. It's
real
mutual.
pleasure to
Yeah.
have you on today. So,
Appreciate it, man.
yeah. So, I'd love you to start by talking a little bit about just kind of your story. How did you come to faith in Christ? What led you into ministry? And then kind of talk about church planning, how you got roped into the church planning world. So,
Wow.
there you
Very
go.
good. Well, we got to go way back because I'm an old man. So, as I was growing up, we didn't go to church, and my dad was a non-practicing Roman Catholic,
Hmm.
and my mom was a non-practicing Baptist, Northern Baptist, and
Worst kind.
they, yeah, right, whatever that meant,
Northern
yeah,
Baptist.
yeah. But we didn't talk about church at all. I mean, just wasn't a conversation. There was your cursory rote prayers at holidays for meals. Um, but no real conversation about church. The other factor was my dad was an alcoholic when I was growing up, and we
Mm,
didn't talk about that much either. And so there was a lot of different strains, family wise, that I experienced early on in life because of that. And I got connected with a local church somewhere around junior high. Had a friend in the neighborhood who was just someone I liked hanging out with, and I'd go connect with him, spend the night at his house, play football in his yard, that kind of thing. And when I was over at his place, I always noticed his parents were really different. They talked to me like I was an adult. They
Hmm.
asked me encouraging questions. They were always very like supportive if I told them I was doing something. And I just was kind of drawn to their family. And I didn't understand why until one day I was spending the night. It was a Saturday, and they said, "Hey, we go to church in the morning. You want to come with us?" Sure. And so
mm,
I showed up with them. And what I experienced was there were a whole lot of other families like that one. And I was just really intrigued by that and really drawn to it. And I found for me, for the first time in my life, real community and like what felt like what family should feel like, and I love my family,
Sure.
but it just really was uh, like just created in me just a feeling of belonging almost instantaneously. It was a small church, not a very big church in Aurora, Colorado, where I grew up, and so I started attending that church, and late junior high became a follower of Jesus, and was baptized, and none of my family came to the baptism because they had really no connection with the church. They didn't really understand what I was doing necessarily.
Hmm.
Years later, I would find out too, there was a lot of woundedness in their lives that kept them from showing up and going to church in the first place. Um, but that's kind of how I got connected with Jesus, through a friend who invited me. And then through that church, there was just a lot of I see in you kind of conversations,
Yeah.
that you have, where people just pour into your life and tell you they see something in you that could be valuable for ministry. And for me, that was youth ministry initially, like it is for a lot of us. And I went to the University of Northern Colorado, and while I was there, kind of had this needing to decide whether I wanted to follow after Jesus or go the path of my family, the trajectory of some of my siblings and my dad. And I chose to finally, at the end, after kind of a struggle, an internal struggle, made the decision to follow Jesus more fully with my life. And at that point, decided if I'm going to do this, I'm going to commit to going into ministry. And so I left the University of Northern Colorado and went to our alma mater. I think we got three of
Yeah.
us on the call here,
Yes.
This
Ozark
episode
Christian
brought to you
College.
by Ozark Christian
Yeah.
College.
Unofficially.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we get him a sponsor. I don't know.
We should
But
ask, yeah.
So
yeah.
what was your connection then to Ozark? Like, how did you even decide
Yeah.
to go to Ozark?
Yeah, it's crazy. So the first time I'd ever been to Ozark is when I showed up in the fall to start the
That's
school year.
wild.
Me
But
too. That's how I
my
went too.
yeah, right?
Even
My
I went to Ozark prior.
yeah.
Hey man,
You,
okay, time out, time out. So back in the day, Tony,
Yeah.
yeah.
like we didn't have
Oh,
internet, bro. So like we
oh, I know.
literally had like catalogs of
Payphones.
colleges.
Yeah,
You get these
right.
Hey,
catalogs of colleges and you
hey,
could like look at the tuition price. They put them out every year.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
like
hey,
I had only seen a brochure of Ozark Christian College. I'd never been there. I didn't know what Joplin, Missouri looked like.
I
Yeah, I
I
had no
just
I
idea.
I
understand.
got married and got in my truck and drove like 3 days later and showed up and there it was.
Look. I understand that I am younger, but the internet came along while I was in high school. It was dial up. There was no browsing for colleges, all right? It was like
That's a
getting
good
real,
point.
so, but
I
I
had
had
dial up,
Larry
bro.
Osborne here.
We didn't have dial
There you go.
Yeah, and then we had CIY come to the Northwest
Sure.
when I was in
Oh,
high
okay.
school. So that was the big thing for
Nice.
me. So,
Okay.
anyways, sorry. Your
Yeah.
connection to
No.
Ozark was you just, how did you even
Showed up.
find out about
Yeah,
Well,
it?
how'd you find it?
the church that I'd started going to, the youth minister that they had hired was from Ozark,
Oh, okay.
and
Okay.
so that was the unique connection. It was a fun church. It was a really small church, but a huge youth ministry. So
Hmm.
Okay.
a strange deal there, but that was the connection. That's where he went, and
Okay.
so that's I didn't have any other thought in my mind about where I could go. And so that was the school I chose, and sold my Mustang. And that's how I was going to pay for school, because my family didn't really completely understand why I was leaving a university where I had some scholarship money and saying no to that, and then going to a school that there was no scholarship for me.
In Joplin, Missouri, of
In
all places.
Joplin, Missouri. Yeah.
Of
Yeah.
all
So
places, bro.
I showed up, and I felt terrible at the beginning, because I grew up in Colorado. It's nice and cool in the evenings. It's got a Northwest kind of a feel in the temperature, the climate, and some aspects. But I was not prepared for the humidity
No,
levels
bro.
of
No,
Southwest
Dude.
Missouri,
no.
and the fact in our day we didn't have air conditioning,
Hey,
and
No.
me
so
neither. All right. I'm
brutal,
old enough. We didn't have
brutal.
AC in the dorms.
So I literally, the first week, that week of August, where you're laying in your bed
Oh,
thinking, what have I done?
What have I done? Yeah.
It
the
is so
worst.
hot in here. The cicadas in the trees
Uh,
making all kinds of noises. You're like, what is going on? Where
uh,
am I? Yeah.
bringing me back, man.
Yeah. So, but it was good. It was a good move. It was a formative time of life for sure. And
Mhm.
it was where I met my wife, Stacy, and then both of my kids ended up going there as well. So
That's
good
awesome.
place. But yeah,
Stacy's parents are who?
my wife grew up in southern Minnesota,
Uh-huh.
and her maiden name is Too Good. Toogood, which is a tremendous
Really?
last name. I considered taking her name instead of having her take mine when we got married because that had made me Tony Too Good. And that's either the best mafia name
Amazing.
Or
or
a
a
rap star.
televangelist or rap
Yeah.
star, one of
Or
the three.
televangelist.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Hey,
televangelist.
I
Yeah.
knew some Two
Televangelist is a
Goods.
good one.
I knew some Two Goods in
That's
Oregon,
awesome.
except it was spelled
Ah,
TWOOD. That's interesting.
yeah, it is, isn't it?
Awesome.
So how did you from Ozark Christian College into church planning? What's the
Yeah. So I was working at a church in the region, Christ Church of Oronogo. It
Mhm.
was a great church, still is a great church, and just started having feelings of restlessness about what I was doing. When I worked with them, I was their children and family pastor, so everybody who was under sixth grade was kind of my responsibility. I had a team, and I didn't know if I wanted to do that the rest of my life. I was in my early 30s at this point. I'd worked there for about 8 years, and I thought, maybe there's something else for me. I didn't know what it was. I just began praying about it. And Brent Storms, who also
Mhm.
went to school with me, he had moved to New England and started working on starting a new church in Lowell, Massachusetts,
Mhm.
and he gave me a call and said, "Hey, you want to join the team?" And I was like, "Wait, what? You're starting a church?" Because at that point in life, I'd never heard of that as a concept. And
Mhm.
so really started praying about it, and through a series of conversations and other people kind of speaking into that, made the decision to move to the Boston area to
So
help
now
start a new
wait, just so
church.
people understand, Orinoco. Tell them what Orinoco is.
Oh yeah.
What is the town of
From
Orinoco?
Orinoco to Boston. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a slight
Quite the
slight cultural
jump.
shift. Yeah. So Oronogo, Missouri at the time, I believe Oronogo was a town of 700 people,
Mhm.
With a church
but there
of,
was at the time I left, the church was about 1,700.
isn't
Mhm.
that crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we used to joke at that church, we're the church in the middle of nowhere. If you could
Yeah.
find us, you could join us.
Yeah.
But it was in
Yeah.
the middle of a field. I mean,
Uh-huh.
literally, you drive down this one lane road, and there it was. It was just boom, and it was a fascinating scenario. It's still a tremendous church, and they were very supportive in sending me to the Northeast and sending me to the Boston area. And one of the other attractive pieces of moving out there for me was my dad was from Massachusetts
Oh,
Huh.
okay.
and had a lot of family in that area. And I did spend a few years in childhood living in Rhode Island, like early in life between like the ages of 2 and 6.
Okay.
Mhm.
And so there was some, draw there, like, hey, I know that there's a need for churches in that area. And for me, that was always kind of forefront in my mind. And so really right around that time, Stacy and I made the decision that we wanted to live in and work in an area where the soil was difficult. And
Mhm.
we wanted to be in an area where there were fewer churches and the need was tremendous for people to get to know Jesus.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, we moved to the Boston area with our 2-year-old son at the time. And we worked there and lived there, starting a church called Harbor of Hope.
Mhm.
And we worked in that church for a 4-year period of time. And right around that time, again, kind of some restlessness of, is this, what the beautiful thing about a church plant, you get to use lots of different tools, the different parts that you don't in a larger church where you're segmented and you're told you have to be
Specialized.
in
Yeah.
this area, specialized.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, yeah, I got the opportunity to preach more. I got the opportunity to lead and create and do different things. And it was just a great experience for us. And so that church was started by an organization called Orchard Group, or
Okay.
back in the day, it was Go Ye
Go Ye
Chapel
Chapel.
Mission,
Yeah.
another
Yeah.
needed name change.
Yeah.
But
Dude, that sounds awesome. Go Ye
Dude,
Chapel.
Go
That's
Ye
amazing.
Chapel.
Dave Smith used to tell us about that because when he
Yeah.
moved down to Ozark, I was in the first church planting class at Ozark
Yeah.
with
Very
Dave Smith.
good.
So he would, because he was up in Nashua
Hmm.
with Orchard Group as well, and back in the
That's
day,
right.
Go Ye Chapel Mission. Oh,
Go Ye Chapel Mission. So yeah,
yeah.
thankfully that name changed. But uh, right around the 4-year mark, they encouraged me to consider moving to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to lead a new church plant. And at the same time, Brent Storms moved on to become the president of Orchard Group.
Mhm.
And so we moved to Pennsylvania and we started another church. And I led that church for 17 years. And so that was that was the outside of my meeting my wife Stacy and the birth of our kids. I think it was the most just the uh, greatest privilege of my life to be able to lead a church for that period of time and allow my kids to grow up in that church and be a part of something their whole lives. And so that was an important piece for us.
We
Mm.
had I can't remember who else it was, but I know you and I both started and led churches for 17 years. And I've run into a couple people that are like,
17-year itch.
yeah, it's the 17-year
Yeah,
itch, man.
you were telling me I need to be cautious of the 17-year itch, but I don't need this podcast getting out to the church here. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
How long you been there, Tony?
oh, I've been back here since 2009.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you're making some progress.
We're sure
Mhm.
glad you're staying for another 20 years, Tony. Your church
Indeed.
people will be happy to hear that.
Yes.
Indeed. Yeah.
Well,
That's
man,
awesome.
that's awesome, that trajectory. So for people that have planted, and planters sometimes can talk about planting with kind of these romantic, notions and stuff like this.
Sure.
But once you like establish the church and you're like leading a church, and there's a point where you're really not a planter anymore. Like
Yeah,
we're
for
5 years
sure.
old. I don't consider myself a planter anymore. I'm just
Hmm.
a pastor of a local church. Um, but there is something special about hearing the call of God and moving to a community and
Hmm.
just starting something from scratch. So
Absolutely.
share a couple thoughts on that. What is so special about the planting
Mm.
versus like going and taking a job at an established church?
Yeah, boy. I mean, I do think you have to have a particular wiring, right? And probably something a little off in your personality. Because I do think part of the attraction and the joy of it is just the adventure and the difficulty,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Because you're forging something, you're trailblazing, you're creating something out of nothing that you hope will far outlast you.
Hmm.
And man, that doesn't that just even talking about it just gets me excited. I just want to be a part of that. And so, I think that for me, growing up in an environment where I didn't go to church at all and then experiencing the church, I knew that I wanted to create that for people because everybody deserves to have their first home church,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And everyone becomes a follower of Jesus because of a church. I mean, there are probably outliers, but for the most part, it's when the confines of community in the church, however that church is formed and shaped.
Mhm.
But the local church is important, and I think there are particular um, uh, things that happen over the course of churches' lives. And there are some really healthy and tremendous churches that have been around for hundreds of years. But sometimes what happens is churches lose their mission and they can kind of begin to think inwardly. I think it's a gravitational pull for every church, even new ones. to become kind of more inward focused and not focused on trying to reach people in the community. But in a new church, you don't have any other option.
Right.
And so you have to, or you're not gonna have anyone around. It's just gonna be you and your dog, right? And
Mhm.
um, so I think that's probably the just the joy of it is you're creating something with people on the ground floor, and many of them have never experienced Jesus in any profound way.
Mm.
And I think it's formational for people. I mean, it just is.
And
Yeah.
it's a different stress, you know. It's funny you said the thing about you and your dog, by the way. When I left youth ministry at 27, and most churches didn't have websites when I was
Right.
at our church. And
Good.
so we had to figure out how to get a website up, and the only staff person was me. So I've actually put my dog on our webpage. It was Eric, senior pastor, and Amos, the
Yeah.
dog. Yeah.
Nice.
So yeah.
Nice.
So when you said that, that kind of brought back a memory. The challenges are different. When you go to an established church, you inherit
Yeah.
all the programs and the
Yeah.
people and the approaches to things. And there's a definite, tension and difficulty, and that's a
Hmm.
big deal to like come in and learn a pre-existing culture.
For
In the
sure.
church plan, it's opposite. It's like you don't inherit all that, which is why some people are attracted to planting. They don't want to deal with trying to turn something around or inheriting
Mhm.
another guy's, creations or whatever. But on the flip side, you're trying to create a culture,
Mm.
and all these people come in with all these ideas about their last church, and I read this book and da da da, da, and,
Yeah.
and you're trying to create this culture, and you
Oh,
kind of know what it looks like in your head, but it doesn't exist yet. And so it's
yeah.
it's the opposite challenge of not inheriting a culture, but trying to create a culture and
Yeah.
have it go.
And to your point, you have a lot of people coming into the new church that have their own ideas of what they think you should be doing, or
Oh
Right.
yeah.
how the church should be shaped. And when you're young in particular, it's a challenge because you do get people who think they might be able to kind of control you this way or that way. And hey, you should be doing this. And it can be difficult to stick to the convictions of no, this is the culture we're trying to create. And sometimes that creates friction and people don't stick around as a result. And so that's a challenge for
Mhm.
sure when you're
Mhm.
trying to create that culture
Right.
from nothing.
So we're
But yeah.
obviously like the small town network and small town
Hmm.
podcasts and all that. What are some of the differences? You worked at a larger church, but in a small setting, and
Hmm.
then in a big city. Um, I was thinking to myself too, you were a Denver Bronco fan in Pittsburgh. That we could probably do a whole
Yeah.
episode on that.
You
But
could do a whole episode on
yeah,
that for sure.
what are some of the nuances between being in the small community and then being in a large
Yeah.
city?
Wow. It's I've been in larger city contexts most recently
Mm.
in ministry and over the last 20 years or so. But for sure, uh, what I think is universal is that everybody has really needs for community. They have needs for um, spiritual formation. They have needs to connect with God in some way. I
Mhm.
think probably that in a small town, there can be feelings a little bit that it's predetermined for you by the family that's usually still around in the area, is a little bit more of a we've been here for a long time, maybe in
Mm.
a small town, and everybody kind of knows your family, and maybe you can get kind of pigeonholed into a this is who you are kind of a
Mm.
feeling. And so often there's some challenges there for people, I think. In a city area, you have a lot of transient people who are living in an area they've never lived. They moved from another place, and so they're looking for that connection. And so I think, there's a different place that people are coming from with those needs, but the needs are the same.
Hmm.
And I think, as I just have experienced it, I think probably one of the greatest challenges right now in America, and I think small town America is probably one of the biggest mission fields, because I think it's probably represents most of the unchurched people in the world, in our
Mm.
country, is in rural America because there aren't as many churches that aren't already just kind of shaped
Mm.
to be for a particular family, and then no one else is around. That's just my 2 cents. The thing with the church in Oronogo, Missouri, that's small town, that I think became attractive is they created something new
Mm.
out of something old, and kind of the old, new wine and old wineskins kind of a deal. And
Mm.
and I think, man, in a small town, when something has the same values that they've wanted, but in a more just a fresher way, it was like, I think, a breath of fresh air. And then
Mhm.
people from surrounding smaller towns came in.
Yeah.
And so I do think there's a huge need there. I don't know, Eric, you have a lot more insight into that than me, but those are just my 2 cents.
Well, Tony and I just talked to Ben Bauman, and
Mm.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
he was just saying that when he moved to Dallas, Oregon,
Hmm.
out of about 20,000, he said one of the things he experienced is that some of the fresher, techniques or ideas that they brought as a church plant into a small community were things that people thought were kind of cool. Because a lot of the more, like you said, the tr churches that are more traditional, that kind of have their can't get that word out, constituency.
Constituents. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they had their people and their place and their way of doing things, and all of a sudden,
Yeah.
the younger guy coming in going, "Hey, let's do this, and we're going to do this," and like
Mhm.
people are like, "Wow, that's different. That's cool. We like that."
Yeah.
So there's
Mm.
Yeah.
some outlet for creativity in a plant in a
Yeah.
small community that they may not have experienced before.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
this great book that's a couple years old now, but Jerry Harris, who's a church planner and in the Midwest, and you remember the name of his church?
Isn't the crossing
Yeah, the
Crossing.
Crossing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Something
yeah.
like, yeah.
Quincy,
They're
Illinois?
they basically plant like kind of like mega churches in the small towns. It's super cool. And
Yeah.
he wrote a book called The Micropolitan Community, or no,
Mm.
Micropolitan Church. And he talks about how in small communities you can take things that are like 10 years behind like the current trend, but nobody in the small towns have done it yet. And
Mm.
Sure.
he was talking about that. It's a fantastic read. It's like pretty short
Mm.
book, but super good book about that.
Mm.
Tony, were you gonna
Yeah.
ask Cologne, were you gonna ask something?
Oh yeah, I will because I feel like we're kind of getting into the second episode material here, and I wanted to catch the transition from Pittsburgh to the Northwest part of the
Yeah.
story here, and how that happened, and why you said yes to coming all the way out here on the opposite side of the country.
But there's one stop in between. So you went from your church to a
Yeah.
church planning organization.
Right, right,
And
right,
Yeah.
then, so how
So,
did you make the switch from planter to like working with planting organization?
so yeah. So as I was considering wrapping up my time in Pennsylvania with Discovery Christian Church, I'd been asked by Stadia Church Planning to consider joining them. I'd spent the majority of the 23 years that we lived in Pittsburgh on the board of Orchard Group. So my church planning experiences had been through that organization,
Hmm.
and Stadia Church Planning had never really planted anything in the northeastern part of the United States, and so they asked if I'd consider, coming on with them and helping to establish a presence there and helping with fostering some church planning momentum in the region. And so, that felt like a good move because the excitement of planting and that kind of entrepreneurial piece still lived inside of me. And we planted some daughter churches when I was in Pennsylvania and some campuses, but it's a young man's game, and I felt a little bit like as I was getting older, like I don't know if I have the time, the ability to actually start a church again. But I can help maybe speak truth to planters and maybe help a little bit as a guide. Hey, this is what worked, and when I was doing, or here's
Yeah.
the way I blew things up and screwed things up. Don't do this. And so that was attractive to me. And so I came on the team at Stadia, and I worked with Stadia for about 4 years, maybe 5. There was some overlap with my time at Discovery, but we remained living in Western Pennsylvania at the time.
Mm.
And
Okay.
so work with them for a season, and then some changes happened at Stadia, and my job wasn't what I had initially planned on it being. There was kind of some shifts and role changes, as often happens in organizations, and I found myself wanting to lead, not to only be a cog in the wheel, and so this opportunity came up to move to the Pacific Northwest and to assume the executive director position of an organization, CEA, that's now Evergreen Network, an organization that's been around for 64 years and had a long history of church planting, and under George Johnson's tenure, really a healthy season of church planting. And I prayed about it, and my wife and I kind of revisited that initial thought we had. There are two parts of the country we would want to live: the Northeast or the Northwest. And we were like, well, we've spent 25 years in the Northeast. Maybe it's time to try the other side of the vineyard and to experience that. And so it was either the call of God or midlife crisis or some mixture of the two.
Combination of the two,
Yeah,
yes.
right. But yeah, we moved out at the end of 2022 and been here for just a little over 2 years now, 2.5 years, and we absolutely love it. We love the Pacific Northwest. We live just north of Seattle in a community called Bothell, and we love the climate. We love the area. We love everything about it.
You
So
like rain?
we do. We like the
That is a
cloudiness at
sickness.
times. I mean, there's
For now.
it's almost as cloudy in Pittsburgh as it is in Seattle.
Oh, really?
Only the geography in Seattle is impossible to beat.
Yeah. Mountains, real mountains. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Actual, yeah, actual mountains.
yeah. Actual
Well,
mountains.
I'll tell
Yeah.
you, I grew, born and raised Oregon, lived in Oregon basically my entire life, except for Bible college, and just recently came to Idaho. And there were days, man, in my prayer time, I'd be like, God, if I could ever live somewhere sunny before I die, that would be awesome. And when the window opened, we were doing criteria for where we're going to plant our next church. And one of the top things was like the will of God and then sunny.
Sunny.
And I remember researching like how many days of sunshine per year and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And I'm telling
yeah,
you, I got the sun. I do live in the desert, it's not like the
yeah.
Phoenix
You're not
desert.
Hey,
getting the
it's
rain like we're getting over here.
trade-offs.
No,
Trade-offs.
we get like dust
The,
storms. Like we'll have
yeah,
this
Yeah.
dust blow in. It's not
the
raining.
Cascades block all that rain coming your direction.
It's
Yeah.
true,
Yeah.
man. Well, awesome. Well, hey, I'll tell you what, why don't we go ahead and wrap this episode and then we'll come back on and record our episode. We talk more about kind of what you're seeing as a church planting director, some of the trends and things like that. So let's go ahead and
Would you
wrap.
mind if I added one last
Sure,
addendum
please.
before this section is over
Yeah,
with? Because I always feel like I initially start out talking about the trauma of my family and they don't bring it full circle.
yeah,
And
please.
I just want to share that I was able to lead both my parents to Jesus and
Mm.
baptize my dad at Christ Church of Oronogo
Right on.
in his 70s. And he passed away now about 15 years ago.
Mm.
But the ability to see your parents take that faith step is pretty tremendous. And
Yeah.
so, while they had a lot of struggle getting there, they became passionate followers of Jesus. And my mom currently lives with us in Seattle, a part of our church planting journey, and she's 92.
That's
And
Wow.
so,
beautiful.
yeah, so,
Beautiful.
and she loves the area too. So just a
That,
little bit of a period at the end of our big
Yes.
story. Yeah,
that is a big part of this
I
world.
love that.
yeah,
I'm glad you shared that for sure.
I appreciate it, man.
All right. Well, hey guys, if you like what we're doing, please like or subscribe. If you're interested in Small Town Network, you can find us online at smalltownnetwork.com. And if you believe in the importance of planting disciple-making churches in smaller communities, we'd love you to consider partnering with us in prayer and financial support. You've been listening to the Small Town Pastor Podcast.